Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome to a Books Beside My Bed video. If you're new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and if you're very familiar with the series, welcome back. This is my reading week from the 13th until the 19th of June. I read a total of 4 things that I'll be talking about in this video, which equates to about 1,208 pages, and my yearly reading total is 226 books. If you follow along on my channel, you will know that earlier in the week I shared a video where I talked about some recent LGBTQIA+ books, which were also part of this reading week, but I kept as a separate video. I will leave that linked on the screen, so if you would like to watch that, feel free to do so. I read some really great books. We're going to jump straight into talking about the books. The first one that I read was The Thrall by Jessica Gadziella, which is the third book in the Seven Sins MC series. This is a dark paranormal romance series following a biker gang of demons. I did receive this as a review copy from the author, so thank you very much to Jessica Gadziella for that. And I will preface this by saying there are a lot of content warnings in this book and in this series in general. It is a vampire book, so you have a lot of blood drinking, there's a lot of blood in general. There is also a kidnapping, there is drug use, there is physical and mental abuse of the heroine, sex clubs, death and violence and all that sort of stuff. Be aware of that going into it, and definitely check out the author's website for content warnings if you want more specific details. This is the story of Nova and Drex. Drex is one of the members of the Seven Sins motorcycle club, and Nova is the thrall to a vampire. So in this world, we've spent a lot of time with the demons and some of the witches, but this is the first time that we've spent any significant amount of time with the vampires. Basically, vampires invite humans to become their thralls, and humans can only become thralls voluntarily. So years ago, Nova had agreed to this. However, years in the future, she is finding that she's very unsatisfied with this. Her master doesn't pay her a lot of attention. She's now quite sickly and anemic and not looking after herself and not eating a lot. When other vampires come to visit her master's home, the thralls who have been there for the longest are often loaned out to guests, and there is a very old, very sadistic vampire who has taken a liking to Nova and tries to monopolize her time. She obviously doesn't like his attention, but doesn't really know how to get out of it. One night the vampires go out to a bar that happens to also cater for BDSM, and Nova is forced into a scene with this vampire, and Drex oversees it. He's immediately drawn to her. He doesn't quite know why, but he also recognizes that she is not consenting to this particular scene, and he knows that she is a thrall, and so he decides to take her away from the vampires who aren't treating her well. The problem with thralls is if they go a certain distance from their masters, they feel physical pain. As they're escaping, she starts screaming and she can't stop. So eventually he drugs her for her own safety so that she is not in pain, and gets some advice from some other local members of the magic community, and the two decide that to break her thrall, they will go on this cross-country bike trip, because the further she gets away from her master, it should lessen the bond enough that it snaps. And so that's the basic premise of the story. I quite like this one. I would like the introduction of the vampires and the vampire world, and the way that all of these paranormal creatures really occupy some of the criminal underworld and their dealings with one another. Overall, I really liked this book. I think the first book is still my favorite in the series so far, but I'm very intrigued to see how Jessica Gadziella continues to build up this world and the magical creatures that live within it. And there is one couple that I'm dying to see their story, because that's going to be a true enemies to lovers story. I also reread Don't Hex and Drive by Juliet Cross, which is book 2 in her Stay a Spell series. I reread this because I received a NetGalley copy of the audio arc, and it was a great opportunity to reread it. This is the story of Isadora Savoy and Devraj Kumar, who are respectively a witch and a vampire. Isadora is very much an introverted member of her family. She loves her gardening, she loves doing her job, and she loves her friends, but she really doesn't venture outside her comfort zone very often. And Devraj is a vampire who's new in town. He is one of the Stygon, who are sort of the vampire hunters of the world and who have extra abilities and extra powers because of their pedigree. And he crashes into Isadora's life quite literally when he hits her on her bike with his car. And he tries to make it up to her. He's very apologetic. And when he takes her home, all of her sisters recognize him as a very famous Bollywood actor as well. And then to Isadora's true annoyance, she finds out that he has moved in next door to her as well. Devraj is very enamored with Isadora, and the two begin to pursue a relationship. The subplot of the story is that Devraj is in town to investigate the disappearance of a series of girls from New Orleans bars. it's his job to track them down because they believe that vampires have been taking them. I love this series. I've always described it as paranormal romance, romantic comedy. It's delightful, it's fun. This book has a very particular content warning that's a trigger for myself. It's very rare that I see this in a book, so I'd completely forgotten about it, and it is the scene where Isadora is learning to drive because she's quite panicked when she drives a car and Devraj decides to teach her. And look, it's a great scene in terms of driving instruction, but for me, the one way to make me panic is to put me behind the wheel of a car. And so the entire time I was reading this scene, I was just having to partially not listen to the scene because even just the thought of it sent me into a bit of a panic, which I know is very strange, but it's just the way that I am. Otherwise, I really enjoy this world. I love the characters. I love the setup of the world. I love the setting, and I'm very, very eager to read the next book, which is Witches Get Stitches, and I have a review copy of it, and I'm hopefully going to read it in the next week. Then I read Shane by Jessica Gadziella, which is the Malik Brothers book 1. This is a dark romance, and it follows Shane Malik, who is a loan shark enforcer in Neversink Bank, and Lee. Lee is new in town and is on the run from something, which we find out later in the book. She desperately needs cash because she's uprooted her life. She has put all of her savings into escaping her past, and she's living in a crappy apartment in a bad part of the town, and she desperately needs money so she can eat and pay her rent. The only job that she can go for is to work at a phone sex company. And she goes there and she meets the owner of the company, Fee, who apparently has her own book, and I need to pick that up at some point because Fee is great. And while she is meeting Fee, she also meets Fee's brother-in-law, Shane. And Shane is complaining to Fee about how he has to go to the family dinner with a girlfriend because that's what his mother wants. And what his mother wants, she gets. And afterwards, knowing she's got a bit of a bargaining chip here, Lee goes up to Shane and says that she'll go as his dinner date if he pays her to do it. He's intrigued by this woman who would be bold enough to come up to him, agrees to it, and she goes to this dinner with the family, which is intense, but it was a hilarious scene. And then obviously the story is around Shane being very intrigued by her and pursuing her despite the fact that she really is not in the market for a relationship at this point, or so she thinks. And then a lot of her past comes to the fore as well, and they both need to confront that. I really like this despite the fact that there's quite a few content warnings in here. I mean, you have loan sharks and loan shark enforcers who are beating people up who haven't paid their debts. It ties into the Neversink Bank world. We meet members of the Henchman MC. I think this book is prior to Rain. All of it ties in really neatly, and I just found it very compulsively readable. Then the final book that I read this week was Ocean Light by Nalini Singh, which is book 17 in the Side Changeling series overall, but book 2 in the Side Trinity spin-off series. This one follows Bowen Knight, who is the security chief for the Human Alliance, and his relationship with Kaya Luna, who is a Black Sea changeling. Black Sea are the water changelings, and so this is the first time that we spend a significant amount of time with them, and it was thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyable. I'd forgotten how much I enjoyed the sea changelings, which I know I've been saying as they've been popping up in the previous books, but to spend the entire book with them, I loved it, and I would like more of them, thanks. This is a direct continuation of Silver Silence because in that book, Bowen was shot. He was also suffering from the degradation of a chip that he had embedded in his head to protect him from psi attacks. He wakes up in a Black Sea installation where he's undergoing an experimental treatment to stabilize the chip in his head so it doesn't kill him. I love this. I'm going to have a full video for this at the end of the week, so stay tuned for that. So those are the books that I read this week. It was a really great reading week. I forgot to say at the start of the video, I was also part of a live show on Heather's channel. I'll leave a link to the live show recording of it. It was on Where Are the Lines in Dark Romance. Obviously, I've been reading a lot more dark romance recently. It was a super fun discussion with some really amazing people on the panel, and I hope that you guys go and check it out on Heather's channel because it was just so much fun. In the comments, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up in the future. Otherwise, feel free to let me know what you have been reading in the last 7 days. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a vampire emoji in the description. I hope that wherever you're on the world, you are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.